We're live. We're back. We're finally back. The online cookout, the cast of the online cookout is back. Jamare, Collins, and Sophia. Today we do have a special guest coming on. Collins, if you can do the honor and kind of tell us what we're going to be talking about.
Awesome. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about, we're going to have a little peek into polyamory. This guest that we have, Gabi Hawk, I asked her, we're part of a Facebook group, and I asked if anybody would be interested in sharing their experiences and a little bit about themselves in the world of polyamory. And this is Gabi Hawk that we're going to be having on the show. And we're going to let her do a little introduction for herself and tell more about what she's up to and things like that.
So right now we're kind of just waiting on her to pop on in here.
All right, I'm gonna double check the link, make sure she got it.
Yeah, double check that, make sure she got it. I'm gonna go here on YouTube, make
link
sure.
In.
If I can get this YouTube link again.
Please check.
Oh, there she is right there.
Awesome.
There she is right there. So Sophie, I'll let you do the honors of bringing her in. I'm gonna go ahead and bring her in right now.
What's her name? Oh, Gabi.
Gabi.
Hi, Gabi.
Hey,
Hello.
Gabi.
Hi, welcome to the online cookout.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So you're hearing us all very well? You can hear us pretty well?
I think so. I think I might put in my other earbud. I had taken one of them out because it makes my voice seem very loud to me, but I think I'll hear you better if I have them both in.
Fantastic. Check one, check two.
I hear you well.
Awesome. Fantastic. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. For those that are joining the online cookout right now and you haven't caught up to what we're going to be talking about, we're going to talk about polyamory. We're having a little peek with Gabi and Gabi Hawk. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to?
So I am a hypnotherapist and Reiki master, and I'm working on my polarity therapy training. So all of that comes down to I try to help people find ways to have better lives. I have a hashtag that I love, more joy, less suffering, because it's about that entirely. I want people to have more joy and less suffering. And one of the ways we get there is to be true to ourselves.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. So when we were talking and our correspondence before, you let me know that you were starting out you started out being with ethical non-monogamy, right? And then eventually went to polyamory. Could you share for the viewers like what the difference is and what made you choose that?
Fabulous. So ethical non-monogamy is kind of like a blanket phrase. So I don't know how safe a segue this is, but kind of the way you would say Christianity.
Okay.
Right. There's a lot of ways that can look that come under that heading. What it means is that you're choosing to be non-monogamous, but you're doing so in an honest, open, ethical manner, and in whatever way you and your partner or partners have made agreements about. So polyamory is a form of ethical non-monogamy, but there are a lot of other forms that look differently than polyamory does.
Got it. Okay. So what made you choose polyamory, which is where you're at now?
So polyamory is specifically the idea that you could have multiple loves and significant relationships in your life. It's not just the idea of having lots of physical connections, but rather emotional and even social ones. So, for example, I have a group of friends. The wife and husband who are legally married to one another have been married for something like 26 years. They've been polyamorous for 25 years. And there's a second husband in that mix who's been married into the group for, obviously not legally, I think 6 or 7 years now. And if you see the dynamic between these three people and the way they have raised children and take care of their house and take care of each other, you have no doubt that they're looking at a real significant relationship.
Awesome. So one of the questions that almost all viewers or people that when I share that, because I'm also, for the viewers out there, I'm also polyamorous. So one of the questions that come up all the time are, well, do you get jealous? And I couldn't do it because I would just get too jealous, or there's got to be too much jealousy going around. How have you dealt with jealousy in your relationships?
Well, I think the first answer to do you ever get jealous is, well, of course. We're all human beings. Honestly, people who tell me they're never, ever jealous, and there are always a few in the polyamorous community who get sort of pollier than thou and try to tell me that they have no jealousy. I think they're full of it or in deep, deep denial. I think it's a normal emotion. I think we all feel a little insecure sometimes. Sometimes we feel a little possessive. So for me, I think the first step to dealing with jealousy is just to not give it a special status. It's just an emotion like anything else, like being sad or angry. How do you deal with feeling sad? How do you deal with feeling angry? How do you feel, how do you deal with feeling jealous? They're all the same question. The same skills you use are the same skills you use for all of it.
So now, a lot of people don't necessarily have positive versions of how to deal with those things, right? They lash out or they get angry,
Fair.
and then they lash out. So how have you positively, then I'll rephrase the question, how do you personally positively deal with jealousy so that it when you're in your relationship, so that it doesn't become something that really brings your relationship down?
Okay. So I guess I would answer that question by saying that I tend to view jealousy as, you ever play video games?
Mm-hmm.
You know how like when there's a side, when there's a side quest, there'll be something sort of lit up in the background, and you know that if you go to that lit up thing, that there's a whole thing there.
Yeah.
So I tend to view jealousy like that. If it's happening, it means there's something under it that I need to address. Either I'm not getting my needs met, or I haven't spoken up for myself, or I really am insecure and I need some reassurance from my partner. So it's a quest. Jealousy always is the beginning of a quest. So you have to sort of view it as, well, first you start with the emotion and you just take a breath and you let it exist, and you don't question it. You don't deny it. You don't feed it. You just let it be, but then you let it show you what's underneath it that you need to work on. And the more you do that, the more you get rid of those underlying things that create the feeling in the first place, and less that has a place in your life. So it's like everything else. It's a practice process.
Awesome.
Gabi, okay, can you do you feel comfortable giving us an example of something that you felt jealous about in a polyamorous relationship?
Sure. Okay. I can think of a few things for sure. So let's say I am partners with partner A, and he has another partner B. And I feel like she's getting more time or more attention, or he's more excited when he talks about her than in our relationship. And this actually comes up a lot if you're in a longer term relationship and then somebody finds a new partner. You know how everybody is at the beginning of a relationship. You get all Twitter pated and kind of idiotic because your hormones up to here. So you have to do a couple things about that. One is to kind of remember that people are insane when they're first in a relationship, and how it is for that, however long that lasts, isn't permanent, that they're still choosing to be with you because they're still there. And then for me, it's about communication. It's about talking to my partner and saying, okay, I have these feelings and I don't know that they're totally rational, but this is how I feel. Can we talk about them? Can we brainstorm ways to help me feel more supported? Can I get a little extra time? Can we reconnect after you've had a date with this new person so that I know you're going to still, if it's a partner that you live with, that you're still going to come home? Just whatever. You got to figure out what it is you need to feel safe and happy and fed and all those things, and then learn how to ask for them. And you need to partner with people who are capable of hearing you and actually delivering those things. Because polyamory isn't all sunshine and roses for sure. There's a lot of work and a lot of communication in it. And some partners aren't up to all that work and all that communication.
Yeah. I feel like if if you're going to feel like that, like if you're the kind of person who feels like, oh my gosh, this person is giving more attention to the other person, then is that not a sign that poly is probably not something that you're comfortable with relationship wise? Like if you know that that's where you're going to be when your mate finds another person that they want to add to the equation, or am I looking at this wrong? Because poly is when you bring someone into the relationship, or is it just you being allowed to go outside of the relationship and have another relationship? Does that question make sense, you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Poly can be any of those things. So some people operate like a couple that's been together for a long time will open their relationship, and they'll often think that the easiest, smartest, safest plan is to bring one person in who is somehow going to be miraculously equally attracted to both of them, and
Unicorn
vice versa.
hunting.
Unicorn hunting. Yeah,
I just learned what that meant. I just learned what that meant about 2 days ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of terrible reputation about that, because it's almost never a fabulous thing. There are triads that exist, 3 people together in an equal, balanced relationship. They happen. They don't normally happen because somebody's out unicorn hunting, and they don't happen as long as different people have different statuses in the relationship.
Right.
And it's a wholly new level of complication. And I've been in 1 or 2 triads in my life, and they were some of the hardest things I've ever done. And I'm not sure I'm cut out for that style.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly what I practice is that I see people on my own, and my partner sees people on his own. And then I have another girlfriend, and she has a partner that she lives with. So everybody has their own relationships. And, sometimes we all hang out and have a barbecue, but generally we each conduct our own relationship separately.
Mm-hmm.
Now, have you ever had multiple partners within one household?
I have not. Now, I've been officially poly probably 3 years. So I have friends that do have, we call them nesting partners, that have multiple nesting partners, and you all live in the same house together, but I haven't actually gotten to the point where that's been a functional reality.
Okay, because I'm always looking at things from an economic perspective. So when I call it the economic family. So when I think of being poly, of having multiple relationships with people, I'm always thinking the benefits of having multiple people in one household.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my friends I was talking about earlier, they pool income. So if one of them gets sick, the other 2 are still supporting the household. So you're not resting on 50% of your support can't go away suddenly. It's a little more divided out, so it's a little stronger.
Awesome. So with more with more partners comes more problems, but also more benefits.
I think so. It's definitely a lot of work, so it has to be worth it, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, can you or Colin speak to how freeing it is if you're allowed to, I shouldn't say allowed, that doesn't sound right. But if you're in a relationship and it's agreed that if you meet somebody, you get to deal with how that works out however you want to deal with it. Like, is there some kind of like freeness to that where you're liberated from the relationship that you're in, but you still get to be in the relationship, but you still get to pursue other people on an intimate level? Do y'all feel like there's like a weight off of your, like a relationship weight lifted off your shoulder when you're, or is it like what the ethical part is what I think I'm struggling with? So I'm trying to feel like, is it like something that makes you feel like I can go through my journey not worried about the normal rules that are attached to relationships, to monogamous relationships, I guess is what I should say.
Colin, do you want to answer that one?
Well, I'll answer for myself, and then you could share. Personally, it is a freeing experience, because I've always believed that I could love more than one person, because I've always loved more than one person. I have been with someone, and then for whatever reason, we broke up, or that relationship, went away or ended. And then I met someone new, and then I happened to see them again, and I still love them. And if this person wasn't here, maybe I would work the relationship out with them again. But I'm not allowed to do that because, I have to be with this person now. And having the freedom to connect intimately, on an emotional level, not just physically, but on an emotional level with the people that I want to connect to. It's been a fantastic step into freedom, because you're quote unquote not allowed to do that. I didn't know that was an option. I didn't know that was okay. So I can love two people and then maybe we can have a relationship that actually it works out. I didn't know that was an option. I had no paradigms really to follow. That's not in TV. That's not in movies. That's not in the books. We don't really have that many paradigms to look at and examples to be like, oh, well, they made it work. Well, so maybe it can work for me. So that weight that you're talking about of, well, I see this person and I'm really attracted to this person, or I really want to be with this person. And that, but I can't, that kind of, that little shackle that's put on, oh, I can't because I don't want to be a bad person. I don't want to hurt the person that I'm with. It's very liberating, and at the same time, of course, it comes with its own set of responsibilities, because now I have to
what
for more. Well, now because you don't get to be like, oh, well, now that I'm poly, I don't have to worry about the feelings of my partner. I can just go out there and be with this person. Okay. You don't, because you now are responsible for this person that you're with, because you still want to be with them. The whole essence of poly is I don't want just one. I want many loves. So you have to have integrity with each one of those relationships.
Exactly that.
Yeah. So like you said, like the person could still get jealous. And I'm not a particularly jealous person. I know where my jealousy comes from. It's from some form of insecurity. So if the person that I'm with is like, I had a queen that she had another partner that she was with, right? And it was more of a worry about, okay, well, are you going to make sure that this person doesn't take you out of what you're up to in life? It was a jealousy of leadership, because I wanted to make sure that person didn't lead her away from what she was up to, because my whole main thing about that relationship was to support her in what she was authentically up to. So it was, that little sparks of jealousy. And so I just had a conversation with her and be like, okay, so are you still going to make sure that you are focused on your goals in life, and make sure that you're going to be achieving these things and not just distracted by this new relationship energy that might, be really, really sparkly right now, and just have those conversations. But it's freeing. And also it comes with extra responsibility, like having more than one kid. You have all the joys of having that second kid. But then you also have all the responsibilities to have, the time and the energy and the patience and all the skills that come with managing that relationship. How about you, Gabi?
So I definitely echo everything that you just said. When you asked about, did it feel freeing? So I think for me, it's a question of, it always feels freeing when you are most authentically yourself, because it's really difficult to be someone who you aren't. So if you are by nature a monogamous person, right, not your thing, then it would not be freeing to become polyamorous, because that would be less authentically you, right? So if being polyamorous or some other form of ethical non-monogamy is more authentic for you, then it's going to be freeing for you. But Colin's definitely right. With every partnership, the same responsibilities you have in that monogamous relationship, they're just multiplied over all of your relationships. You still care about that person's well-being and their feelings, and are they getting what they need, and are they safe, and all of those things. You just worry about that for more than one person, not unlike when you have more than one child.
Mm-hmm. Oh, also, this is a good point. I kind of forgot about this. There was also something freeing about my partner choosing to be polyamorous as well, because I felt a relief of not having to be the one that gave them all of the things that is required within a relationship. So for me, like, my sex drive wasn't as high as hers. And so I was very relieved. I was like, okay, well, great. Because for me, I see this archetype of like, okay, there's person A's sex drive, there's person B's sex drive.
That's so humble of you.
And the optimal thing is to try to find some medium ground. But even in that medium ground, the individuals aren't getting their ideal situation, right? So let's say I want sex once a week. This person wants sex 5 times a week. So then we compromise and we do 3 times a week. I still want to do 1 time a week, right? And so I'm doing 2 extra times and she's doing 2 less times than she wants, right? And so if I have another partner there that can lighten the load of me having to be there, it's awesome. So like there were times that I just didn't really feel like, and I was like, hey, you know, do you think you can call your man?
What?
Call him up. Yeah, like
you offer up the other partner?
Yes. Also, another one was the financial obligation, right? So she wanted to go out. She wanted to go out and she had some event and something like that she wanted to go out and go to. And I'm not a going out person. I don't like going out. And so I was like, hey, well, you know, what was his name? I forgot his name, but you know, call up Richard, you know, and ask him if he wants to go out. Because then you'll have the partner that you have somebody there with you to go to this event. Right? They'll take you out. They'll buy you whatever sushi and stuff like that. And on top of that, you know, hey, bring some sushi back. And I got sushi that I want. you know, so,
it totally happens.
Yeah,
it totally happens.
Yeah, like I got lots of gifts that I wouldn't have gotten before if I was just in a monogamous relationship.
But then what if you started making yourself useless to your relationship? Because it was kind of like, let Richard handle it. And then she's kind of like, okay, well, I mean,
because I'm
a lot of slack around here. I want to make him my full-time guy alone.
Well, personally, I would say that's the fear. That's that insecurity thing that would come up regardless of whether you were monogamous or not in that relationship. You know, that's something that would come up always. It would be even the idea of this other person. So people will have the idea, or that work husband or that work wife, right? Or that friend that's in the background that is there just in case something doesn't work out. You know, for me, that was my experience. I was like, all I know is I got to make sure that I do my job in the relationship. Right. So then I didn't give in to that fear because I was like, well, listen, he's not going to do all the things that I am doing. He's not going to do all of the things, right? So if she's free to have, you know, cake and icing and veggies over here and ribs over here, well, she likes all of those things. So if I make sure I still bring my cake and then the other person brings their icing and the other person brings their veggies, then, you know, I've just got to be responsible for what I'm doing in the relationship. And then I don't feel that fear doesn't, you know, it doesn't take over. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so for me that's how I dealt with that, and continue to deal with that.
Now, Gabi, in your experience, would you say that more people are conditioned into monogamy, and is that the reason why we are typically monogamous?
I think there's definitely some cultural things that go on. You know, I think that we don't. I think. Colin, did you say that it's not in the movies, it's not in the TV, it's not in books, those kinds of things? We don't have a map. So I think when you sort of default, you're going to default to the cultural norm, and the cultural norm is monogamy. And I think some people do really well with it because it's also their authentic self. And then some people do really, really poorly with it because it's not who they truly are. In the same way that maybe people, especially say 50, 60 years ago, would default to heterosexuality because that was the norm. And the idea of coming out and saying that you were gay was scary and dangerous. And furthermore, they didn't know anyone else that was like that. They had no map. They had nothing to even bring it up. But now that we're in this era of internet and shows like this and different opportunities to learn about these things, I think people are learning younger that they have more choices. And I think we'll see that shift. I think there's a lot more non-monogamy in millennials than, say, in my generation.
So do you think that it's a positive shift that is happening for those people that are in, like, you know, the millennial generation, to have that option, just to have that, you know, oh, well, maybe we can do this and then be accepted. You know, do you think that's
absolutely.
A positive shift?
I think options are always positive, right? More choice, more information, always positive.
Awesome. So in your experience, do you have any children?
I do. They're with a now ex-husband, and we were we came from a monogamous side. He's really a monogamous person. Mm-hmm. Eventually, the fact that he really was and I really wasn't was sort of part of the end of things. Mm-hmm. There were other problems. But mm-hmm. So their dad isn't part of this culture or this experience. But my kids are 18 and 21. Oh, okay. But they were younger and they were both at home. And I had a stepdaughter at home when we opened. And we definitely went through a lot of discussions about, do you tell the kids? What do you tell the kids? Right. How do you tell the kids? Actually, the kids were way easier than the in-laws.
Right. As it tends to be, right?
Yeah. So how was that, if you've seen other poly couples with kids, young kids, how do they go about, raising them and educating them on their relationships?
Most of the poly couples I'm aware of are poly thruples, fourples, whatever they are. Mm-hmm. It's that same thing you were saying about financial benefit of more than two people in a household. Mm-hmm. Quite honestly, you get more than 2 or 3 people in a household, and you can divide the childcare duties around as well too. So yeah, it's that whole takes a village where you can have a whole village in we call them polycules because they look like molecules. I know it's a geek thing. We're all very silly.
A whole nother realm of terms.
It is, but then you have this, it's like, in a weird way, it's almost a throwback to the old extended families that used to be common and sort of died in the age of the nuclear family where you just had like mom, dad, and kid. And then if anything went wrong, you'd lost 50% of your team. Right. And it used to be you had extended families with aunts and uncles and sisters and brothers and parents. Polyamory in a really weird way kind of brings that back. So there are times that if I have trouble with childcare or I'm trying to plan a birthday party, I have a much bigger team of people to fall back on to get some support or some help. Or maybe this person, has kids the age of their outgrowing clothes that might be handed down to kids that are my kids' age or vice versa. So it makes a bigger team. And in terms of explaining it to the kids, honestly, they're not generally anywhere near as stressed about it as the adults think they're going to be. They're like, okay, this is fine. As soon as they see that it's fine, everybody's happy. And as far as they're concerned, it's one more person to buy them a present, one more person to take them to the movies. They don't care. They're good.
Yeah, that's interesting because that actually was the first experience that I had of jealousy as a kid was when my dad found his long lost, childhood sweetheart. And I was scared that would mean that I would have less time with him. And so that's why he called me and he asked me, hey, son, so I found Flo and I knew about Flo. I knew about all the other girlfriends and things like that. But no, this one was serious. Right. And so he's calling me and asking me, hey, so, I found her and I'm thinking about marrying her, so what do you think? And I was scared. I was instantly jealous and scared. I had those weird feelings that I didn't really recognize. And I was like, okay, but what, and I was just talked about what I was scared about. I was a kid. I was free to talk about things, right? And so I just asked him, I said, well, are we still gonna play soccer? Are we still gonna be able to go to the movies? Are we still gonna be able to hang out? And he's like, yes, of course. I mean, you're my son. Nothing's gonna change that. And because I had a great relationship with him and he never lied to me, that he would always just he didn't tell me about Santa Claus and all these things. He'd always talk to me and just, so I believed him when he spoke, right? He said he was going to be there. If he said he was going to show up, he showed up. He said he was going to bring me something. He brought it. He said he was going to go and do something and we're going to eat this for dinner. We ate that for dinner, so we had that kind of rapport. And so when he said that, all of a sudden, boom, my heart opened up. Well, does she like to play soccer too? Would she come to the movies with us? And all of a sudden I wanted to bring her in, I was like, oh, there's another person that we could play with. So now she can be the goalie maybe, and so as a kid, that's why I don't really have fear around if I have children or if a partner already has a child or something else and they're brought into this lifestyle that it's going to be a detriment because almost all of us know someone that has had a stepmom, stepdad, the boyfriend, girlfriend that has been there. And that's a version of polyamory, not necessarily officially we're all together, but it's a version of it that we've had since who knows how long.
That we become accustomed to.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes the poly version is better only because you don't have a hurt ex putting things in the kid's ear about how terrible it is. You've got people who are actually all saying, yeah, this is fine. This is good. Everybody's happy. And you can actually have birthday parties with everybody there because nobody has to avoid anybody.
Right. the extra benefits. That's awesome. So question, would you, or, you know, if and how would you recommend for people that are curious about, you know, hey, maybe I want to be polyamorous or maybe I can step into this life, you know, what things would you recommend for them when they're just getting started with expressing that version of authenticity for themselves?
So I'm big into research, right? So when my husband at the time and I decided to open up, we got More Than Two, which is one of the books, and that's pretty much the first recommendation everybody makes. I bought The Ethical Slut, which sounds a whole lot more exciting and it has a slightly different bent. There's another book called Opening Up, and there are just a ton of Facebook groups and other podcasts. Like I think there's one called The Cunning Minx that does really great stuff. And there's Chill Polyamory. She's on Instagram all the time. She has great stuff. So find resources. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't step in every single possible hole you can step in because a lot of us have stepped in them before. So, you know, you can avoid the twisted ankle sometimes. So first of all, seek information, try to find the community, find other people. My friends that I was talking about, they're kind of my go-to mentors when I was just beginning and I was having some stress, or I was trying to figure out if what I was doing was right or wrong, or how my partner was responding. Is this appropriate, or is he being selfish, or what's going on? I could take those problems to somebody more experienced than me and say, okay, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. This is what's happened. Am I being rational? Am I not looking at this the right way? Can you help me reframe this? So I think community is actually really important if you can find it, which is obviously easier in larger cities. It can be really hard if you're rural and kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Now, I will say this also, to piggyback off of what you're saying with the groups and things like that. Also be careful when you're seeking counsel from people in those, like in the Facebook groups, because you have all manners of people in those groups. All right. You have people that are really, you know, level-headed and they've had experience like Gabi or myself, and you know, they're really adjusted within their life, and they're not coming from a negative place. It's not a scenario of polar opposite insecurity compensation where they felt, you know, super for whatever reason, they felt super fearful within the relationships or super regretful or whatever the experience was. And they're like, well, in order to fix this, we have to become polyamorous, right? Because I don't want to lose you, or for whatever situations. And then you have those people that are in the groups that are really coming from hurt places. And so they'll say things like, oh, that's a red flag, run from that. When it could be a point of concern that you can actually address with the person and bring it up and see where that's coming from. Is that something, because this is a skill that you're going to have throughout the relationship.
Yes.
So for me, whenever I see a red flag, I talk to them about it. I discuss that, like, okay, this is a scenario, this is a concern for me. Like, what's going on? What's behind this? Are you willing to shift this? Are you willing to change that? Because that's not going to work in this relationship, blah, 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 blah. And you know, and if they're like, no, this is just how I'm going to be, you know, I'm never going to come to your house because your girlfriend lives there, you know, and that's just the thing. I'm like, okay, well then, you know, this is not going to work, you know, but are you willing to shift that? Is that, you know, what's behind that? Do you have a problem with the fact that I have other relationships because that's never going to change, you know, or do you have a problem with this specific, you know, idea that's behind going to this house, you know? So in those scenarios, I would recommend for them to actually address it with the person that they're concerned about. You know, mine is someone grabbing you, because that's obviously a physical abuse, red flag, right? But when they're having conversations and you're talking about things that are triggering you, I would recommend for you to communicate with that person about what you're triggered about before just walking away, because there's potential for positive, you know, movement and growth within that relationship. And you might not
Sure.
get that in those groups. People might just be like, run!
Yeah, you get a whole range of responses for sure. You need to kind of, and if you spend any time and then you begin to kind of see the people who are always inflammatory, always looking to start trouble versus people who have like a more settled kind of suggestion. Yeah. For me, I think it's always interesting when people tell other people what to do. That to me is always my version of a red flag.
Right.
Ask me questions, sure. Tell me that something is some way and I should run away. Well, now I know that you are the person that I need to run away from because you think you can tell me how to be. And that's never helpful. Conversation, negotiation, processing with each other. The other thing I would say is that polyamory doesn't leave you a lot of room to not do your work for yourself. So if you have a lot of insecurity, if you have a lot of jealousy, if you have a lot of anger management problems, if you have things that, maybe should have sent you to therapy a while ago, now is the time before you open up, before you're in these heightened scenarios where you're pushing all your buttons or having them pushed. Do the work, take the time, learn how to communicate without violence with each other. Learn how to be present with yourself and be okay with having feelings, because polyamory is like, or for me, it's always been like, it doesn't create anything new, but it shines a big frickin' spotlight on everything. So you no longer can hide any of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had that experience as well. Like I've had people that have had issues within their own relationships and they've gotten away with it because, well, they're monogamous and their partner, they don't have to deal with it as much. When they say, why are you texting that person? Well, the partner just like, okay, well, I guess since I'm monogamous, I'm not allowed to text someone, or I'm not allowed to do this, or I'm not allowed to whatever. And so they'll shrink themselves for that person because they're kind of in like this little cocoon of safety, but it's really locking down all of those insecurities and all of those issues, and they never really get dealt with. And then they get in a relationship with me and it's like, yeah, you're going to have to deal with that because it's not going to work in this scenario. You can't get away with, being worried about text messages because like, this is more than messages. We're going to be meeting. We're going to be communicating. We're going to be connecting. We're going to be intimate. We're going to have these deep and meaningful relationships, so you're going to have to deal with that at some point. So, yeah.
So
go ahead.
What would you guys say is, a few of the major misconceptions when somebody is thinking about polyamory, or just the overall the overall thought of polyamory? What do people think when they necessarily think about polyamory?
Well, the number one thing people always think, right? They think it's about sex, that you can have sex with whoever you want and there's no consequences. Right. And it's kind of a standing joke in the poly community that what we have far more than sex is conversations. We talk about it and we talk about it some more and we talk about it some more. So there's a lot of processing and a lot of conversations. And yes, some people's non-monogamy looks like a bunch of sexual partners. And on the other hand, some people have relationships that's not even part of their arrangement. Because now that you don't have to have one relationship try to meet every last one of your needs, maybe you have a partner who you love to cook with and you like the same TV shows, and cuddling with them is incredibly satisfying. And they're just really wonderful human beings and you feel great love for them. But maybe they're asexual. Maybe they're never, ever going to want to have sex with you.
And the crazy thing, Collins, you can attest to this, Collins. Even when I was in college, I used to talk to a lot of women, and some of the women that I was talking to, we never had anything sexual. Some came over, like you said, we just watched movies. Some came over, cooked, and that was our relationship. And so then when you get married, that has to stop, right? Because when you're in a monogamous relationship, the person that you're with doesn't necessarily understand. Maybe you want to have a relationship with another person, but it's not sexual.
Right. Cuts off those relationships.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And it almost seems to make a declaration about the importance of those relationships. They're disposable the minute your spouse says they have to be disposed of. And maybe these are some of the deepest friendships you're ever going to have in your life. One of the things that ethical non-monogamy gives you a chance to do is decide that all your significant relationships are significant and worth protecting and worth taking care of. And that's, there's a whole branch of polyamory called relationship anarchy. They don't like labels for their relationships. They don't believe in what we call the relationship escalator, where you meet, you date, you get married, you have children. There's kind of a process. They tend to think that those kinds of rules for how things have to progress are not useful. They frequently live solo. They don't like to live with other partners. They don't create any hierarchy between one partner and another. And they may have friendships that actually are as long-lasting, committed, and real as a romantic relationship, and they don't see them as any different. Now, I am not remotely RA, but I really have to respect those ideas, because I've had friendships in my life that have outlasted, I don't even know how many relationships, like romantic relationships I've had. And to really recognize that they're just as powerful and important and worthy of energy and protection, that works for me.
That is very important.
Yeah, I think, okay, if you're in a monogamous relationship, though, it kind of requires you to put restraints on the situation, because we can't pretend like we're not aware of how outside relationships can manifest into something else, and then it can jeopardize your monogamous situation. But I guess that is a pro of a poly relationship, because it's okay if the monogamy is jeopardized, but in a monogamous situation, it's not, the rules can't be the same, because if you're just letting your spouse's bestie who likes to come over and cook for him come into your house and cook or whatever, that just starts a whole nother issue. It could start a whole nother issue. So you can't have the same rules in a monogamous relationship that you would have in a poly relationship. You know what I'm saying?
That's definitely true on some level, but on a very real way, it kind of depends on how much you trust your partner. Do you trust him when he says, this is just a friend? And culturally, we're taught not to trust that answer. I mean, not to be gendered about it, but especially from men. Our belief that they can keep that separate is fairly low for a lot of people. And so, I've lost friendships because somebody else's girlfriend doesn't want me around, even though it was just a friendship.
Facts.
Right.
And maybe he was a completely trustworthy dude, and I'm certainly a completely trustworthy person. But if she can't be sure of that, then she can't take that risk.
Right.
I've definitely been in that situation when, I've had a friend and they got married and he was jealous and that was that. And now they're getting a divorce. So, what do you do when you do choose your spouse over a good friend, and then that relationship ends, and you pretty much toss that friendship to the side?
But if it's a friend, if they're really a good friend like that, and your whole marriage ends, surely they're good enough a friend to be there for you after the fact. The only way that they would be offended by you starting this relationship, wait a minute. The only way someone would be offended by you discarding their relationship for your marriage is if they felt a different kind of connection with you, which validates the argument. No, and I'm going to show you how this is true. I'm going to tell you how this is true, because I've had friends who were with somebody, and it wasn't that they thought that their girlfriend or wife was going to sleep with me because their girlfriend or wife was heterosexual, but it was just the idea of being in control and cutting them off from their friends. But when the relationship was over, I didn't feel like, well, you threw me away when you were with him. I was just like, hey, girl, I'm here for you, So that's because I wasn't thinking someday me and her might get together. You get where I'm going with this?
I get where you're coming from, but I think part of it is because we're culturally taught that that's normal, that when you get in a relationship, it's okay to dump your friends. Your friends all expect to be dumped, And so they're all tolerant of being dumped and taken back and dumped and taken back.
Yeah.
Because we don't think we're supposed to be as important. So we're okay with being treated that way.
No, I don't feel like that. I don't feel like somebody should hold you hostage away from your friends or from your family or anything like that. But if they did, if I'm saying that I'm your friend, and then I recognize the person as toxic once I realize that they're withholding you from friends.
Right.
Once the relationship is over, I would never, and I can say this because I've never in the situation, I would never be like, well, when she was with him, she ain't want to hang out and be my friend. So I would look at it like, okay, she's free, but there's still a hurt to being free after a long relationship. So I want to be a friend and be there for the person. Like, that's how I would look at it.
Sophie,
I think that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. And I would say,
I'm sorry,
Sophie,
go ahead.
Sophie, that's you. It's not everyone. some people you cut off, they don't want to be your friend anymore. Those are, years or months that you spend away from them. They had to do without you because somebody told them that they couldn't be your friend anymore. And it seems kind of childish, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but it's reality for some people. Yeah,
it's a fact. And
it is reality for some people, for sure.
And Colin stated it earlier when he alluded to it earlier when he said it's insecurities.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a lot of insecurities, and so what they try to do is try to control those insecurities by controlling you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that doesn't really. Well, that's another plus for polyamory, because that doesn't necessarily. You're either going to deal with that in a positive way, and nullify that relationship, or invalidate that relationship, or you're going to invalidate that relationship, and then you're probably going to have problems. Those things are going to come up and outside, because you can't change somebody else in order to fix your own insecurities. So no matter how much someone else, like I've been the 100% super, loyal and, super monogamous, good boyfriend. And no matter what happened, the insecurities of my girlfriend did not change. No matter what I did, she was always worried. She was always afraid. Like no matter how much I reinforced, no matter how much I told her I love you, I'm never going anywhere. I'm not even, interested in this person, whatever the scenario is, no matter what I've done, it hasn't shifted like that, because they didn't shift it within themselves. So that for me, I've done it till I'm blue in the face, trying to make sure that I, take care of my woman and make sure that she knows that I'm here for her. But if she had abandonment issues since she was 5 years old, I wasn't even in the picture in those times. So like I can't fix that problem by not having friends, by not having other relationships. Whatever those issues are, she has to deal with those issues, within herself. I mean, yes, I can help her. But me, like as a counselor, most of the times my queen doesn't want to listen to me because I'm her man, and my counsel will be skewed. Like the idea that people can't be objective within a subjective situation. It's kind of taught, but it's possible, just because
it's tough.
Just because a person, like for instance, Jamare is a financial guru, right? But his wife might not listen to him when it says, "Hey, babe, I don't think we should buy this, couch, or I don't think we should get this, this TV. It's not the best TV to get."
She listens.
She does.
You're a lucky man. Lucky man.
Awesome. That's awesome. But like I always use it for me. I always use like the Jesus in the Bible example, where his own parents and his own family members, they weren't trying to listen to him. So it kind of gives me a little bit of solace. But I would also recommend everybody has some kind of therapist or some kind of counselor that they can actually go to that's well versed in these things, because if it could be a scenario of the blind leading the blind, and nobody can really assist anybody.
Right. And when you're involved in it and you have a stake in the decisions and the person's well-being and how they're acting about how they feel, you can't be that kind of clear that a therapist or a counselor or somebody whose job it is to listen to them and deal with it from a neutral standpoint. It's incredibly difficult to be neutral when you live with somebody and not just about something financial, though that could be emotional too. But when you're talking about deep emotional stuff, then there's a point at which you just can't be neutral about it anymore when it's about you. At least very few people can.
Yeah, I wasn't able to. I'll say that, transparently, I wasn't able to for 28 years of my life. And then I just had a, spiritual experience where I was able to be clear about what the root of suffering was and attachment and things like that. And so before I go into a relationship and during, like, daily, I consistently will detach myself from the outcome of that relationship. It's very difficult to do, but it's an absolute must for me to have integrity, because I don't want to compromise my word by, well, I would say this if you weren't my woman, but I'm going to say this instead because I don't want you to be hurt, or I don't want you to, like, and usually it's in that scenario, like, okay, you might get hurt by the truth. And I've got to share that. And it's difficult to do that knowing that it's my, my significant other and things like that. So how close are we? Oh, so we have like about 10 minutes left, right?
Yeah, just give her, Gabi, it was great having this conversation with you. Do you have any last things you would like to tell people about poly? I know you do a lot of stuff, so I definitely want to have you on later on, because what you do with we say hypnotherapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely.
Hypnotherapy. That's another topic we can definitely have. But also, is there any last words you would like to say, and where can people follow you and see some of the things that you do?
So I guess the thing that I want to say to people about polyamory is that there is not just one version. There is no one truth. There's a lot of ways to do it, as long as you're being in communication with your partners and you're being honest and direct, and nobody's lying and nobody's hiding anything, and everybody's speaking what they need to speak. The rules really are very flexible. They just have to be made to fit the people that are in the relationship. Mm-hmm. So don't think that just because one person tells you, oh, this is how it has to be, and if you ever feel jealous, or if you don't feel, we have a word called compersion, means the happiness for the happiness of our partners. Yeah. And those of us who get that, it's
awesome.
It's the best thing in the world, right?
It's awesome, man.
It's like my partner is watching right now with his other partner, because she's at our apartment while I'm here doing this podcast. Mm-hmm. And so they're watching together, and I'm super happy because I'm sure they're cuddled up on the couch together and they're watching the thing, and the dog is probably laying all over them, and it's great. So if you get compersion, it's the best thing ever. Yeah. And other people do not get it at all, and they're still successfully poly. So there's no one holy grail. There's no one higher truth, except for be honest, be real with people. Mm-hmm. So that'd be the first thing. And the second thing would be what I said before, and what you talked about: do your work, get a therapist, spend some time with yourself, learn how to deal with your feelings. Address maybe those self-worth or insecurity issues that you've been carrying around since your childhood, because they are going to be the source of all sorts of drama and not fun kinds of excitement in your life if you don't take care of them. In monogamous relationships too, but in polyamorous relationships, it's even more, it's just bigger.
Yeah.
As for how you can find me, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I have a Facebook business page. It's called Being You. It's BE-ING-U. But actually the easiest way to find me on either Instagram or Facebook is #MoreJoyLessSuffering. Mm-hmm. If you search that, you will find my stuff, no matter where you go. I live and work in Tempe, Arizona. I don't know how far this podcast, I know that you guys aren't here. You're across the country from me. So that's my home space. That's where I see clients. I see people. I could do Zoom sessions and stuff like that too. So if somebody sees this and goes, I'd like to talk about relationships and how to work on my self-worth, and I need some help, and they want to get a hold of me, they can get a hold of me. We can do something, over the phone or through Zoom or something. So it's been really nice to be here and to have a positive space to talk about polyamory. Yes. And I appreciate your opinion and position on it too. So I'm glad that you were here and it wasn't all just positive comments, that there were some real questions and real concerns and some challenges too. So that was fabulous. So thank you very much.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, Gabi. You were awesome and informative.
Thank you.
This is part one. This is part one.
This is part one. We'll definitely have you back because we'll have like questions and other, people will come up with comments and things like that, and they'll have follow-ups and things like that. So we definitely want to give you a place to share and really value your input. And
anybody else that would like to come on, they're free to come on.
I will definitely pass the word.
Awesome. Right. Well, thank you so much, Gabi.
Thank you. I'm pushing the button. Bye.
All right,
guys. That was great. Great conversation. Yeah, man. That was great. Learned a lot.
Yeah.
Sophie, you learned a lot.
I am not doing poly, but I do respect, like, as I was listening to her, and plus, I get to hear Collins talk about it all the time. But I do feel like there is a freedom to it, a freeness, because you're not feeling restricted. Although, like, I'm monogamous to my core, so if I'm in a relationship, I rarely feel like I wish I could pursue that. I rarely have that. But if I did, I could see how it would be freeing for someone to try to get to know somebody on a deeper level, just because they're interesting and they want to get to know them,
Right.
And I think it does require a higher level of communication because, as she said, you're going to be communicating a lot. You're going to have a lot more conversations than sexual interactions sometimes.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And I find that in monogamous relationships that, a good monogamous relationship, you're always communicating and having conversations. So I can only imagine having multiple partners, how those conversations and, having a deeper understanding of just how human beings just work,
Right.
And not holding people back or holding people hostage, as Collins alluded to, and letting people be as authentic, their authentic selves as much as possible. So I liked it. We got to do more of this, and I'm glad that we're back on doing our thing again. So let's continue to do what we're doing and spread that positive message and spread those ideas, and not just talking about things that are happening mainstream.
Yeah. Oh, also a gift for those out there. Let's do our plugs, y'all. If you are, curious, or you have any issues that you would want to work through, whether you're monogamous or polyamorous or whatever. Because as we discussed, monogamy does not save you from having to deal with your relationships. You still have to deal with your relationships, still have to deal with your insecurities and do that work and find out those triggers and work through all those things. And I do provide that service for anyone dealing with any struggles within their relationships or just want to grow their relationship. And they said, okay, well, this relationship's solid and I want to expand on it and have it grow, or, try out polyamory or open relationships or grow my monogamous relationship and things like that. I provide that service. You can email me at myrelationshipworks@gmail.com. Once again, that's myrelationshipworks@gmail.com, or just contact me on Facebook. Look up Collins Peters. Actually, I think you have to put Collins Jack Trades Inc. Peters, and I'm the first one that's going to show up. You'll see this exact face with this garb. And Sophia, please tell us about what you got coming up with the shows and stuff and all that good stuff. Please let us know.
Oh my God, I'm so garbage at plugs. So, okay, I don't have anything coming up for the rest of this year, but next year I don't. But that's a good thing for me. But next year I did a reading of 4 Colored Girls. And so next year we're going to actually put on the real show. Ooh. And I believe it's going to be at the Pompano Beach Multicultural Center. Okay. But don't hold me to that. Of course, I will totally update y'all. But that's it for me.
Awesome. And people that are trying to get their homes and need loans and want financial advice and get their credit right and all those things like that, Jamare, please let them know how we can get some of those services.
Listen, I'm just gonna plug all that stuff in the description.
All right.
Okay, well, speaking of descriptions, we need to tell the people to leave comments and share this video and discuss.
Yes.
The point is to get you guys talking about things that we are not normally talking about in our living room, but sometimes when we get to the cookout, it goes there. Well, we're trying to give you guys the knowledge for the next cookout. So if y'all were into this, or you're kind of questioning some things that were taking place in the conversation, let us know so that we can communicate with everybody out there, you know.
Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell,
get the
like,
notifications,
or even dislike.
Share. Yeah, you can dislike it. You can dislike it. You're like, hey, man, I don't like
whatever you want to do.
Awesome.
So again, we'll be back. When are we coming back next?
I think we're doing next week. Well, we'll let you guys know ahead of time. We'll give you some advertising. But our next show will be with a woman who happens to Sophia. You tell them what they.
Okay, so
guest. Like,
our next guest is the wonderful Denise Lane. She works with the community in all kinds of awareness projects and educational projects. And the one thing that intrigued us about her was this project that she has for youth entrepreneurship. And we're going to talk to her about that, about how it is to get the youth involved with being an entrepreneur.
You know, that's my thing right there. That's my thing, entrepreneurship.
If you got kids, make sure you tune in to that show.
Yes.
All right, because you can give them option to have their own businesses and encourage them so that they are financially stable and they have great, opportunities to express themselves.
Okay, guys, we're out. We hit that mark.
All right.
We're out.
Bye, guys.
Later, guys.
I don't know how to hang up this thing. Leave studio.
There you go.
Okay.
No,